Peace and Black Power, Baba. Welcome to the platform again. How are you, Baba?
Greetings, Dr.Maat. I am doing wonderful. I'm looking forward to this evening myself because we spend so much time talking about the problem, which it deserves. But often we don't have one, single conversations where we're talking about what we need to do about it or how we need to think about it. So this is, I'm looking forward to this evening as well. I appreciate the fact that the warriors, the elders, are present in the audience, and of course, we appreciate you always, Inia and I. You're part of our part of our ongoing conversation here because that's 95% of our conversation. Doing what needs to be done in the community, who's doing the work, etc. So I appreciate the invite, and I enjoyed the first lecture, and I know I'm also going to enjoy this one because I learned stuff from me as well.
I say, Baba, and I appreciate you and Mama's words and your support, Baba, and thank you so much. And again, I always say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're very, very busy, and so I give thanks that you take time out of your schedule to be with my listeners and I. And as I said to them, Baba, we can never repay you for all that you and Mama Yah have given us, but we can try, right? We can try, and and do that by supporting you not only with our words but with our resources. And so, Baba, I give thanks for all that you've done, for our community to push us ahead, Baba. So I give many, many, many thanks, Baba. And Baba, before we get into center, tell us about the complementarity conference that you have coming up in June.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. I put a flyer at the end of the PowerPoint as well as one for comments and security, which is extremely important as well. But the complementarity conference is going to be on the 3rd of June. We are really, really looking forward to it. We have several presentations. And one of the things that ENEI keeps trying to emphasize is that a lot of times when people hear about complementarity conferences, they're thinking, okay, this is something for couples. This is something for folks who've been married. This is stuff for folks who have found somebody. No, we want folks who have been married. We want folks who are in, relationships. We want folks who are single. We want everybody who understands the idea, who wants to understand the idea of complementarity from an African center to be present. There are going to be, of course, men and women there. And if you're in the audience, then you can connect. You see someone who you're interested in. You all know how to use the chat and you can talk to each other. And we keep telling folks, if you are looking for someone, you should be doing the work. And if you're doing the work, you're going to find someone of like mind. And there's a lot of politics, a lot of silliness you're going to have to deal with because obviously they're there for a reason. And if they're bold enough or crazy enough or however we want to phrase it to be at a complementarity conference that the Barutis put on, then they probably have some degree of sense about them. So we're looking for everyone to be there. And we're also looking for, and I'm speaking out of Enia's mouth because she's always talking about who should be there. We also want the teens to be there. We want them to understand what's going on so that when they move into this position, of finding a relationship, of developing a mature relationship with someone of the complementary sex, that they have a better idea of what they're looking for in this. So the complementary conference, this is a communal thing. This is, about us trying to discuss things that we need to talk about in terms of us developing the complements, which will develop the families, which will develop the communities, which will develop the nation that we need.
I say, Baba. Oh my gosh, you said like so much in that last sentence, right? When you started talking about developing, and then you said, but it all starts, like you said, with self, and then partnering with someone, like you said, a complementary sex, and then from there building families, then from there building communities, then from there building nations. And so, Baba, this is needed, and I'm glad that you clarified that because I thought it was just for couples. I was like, okay, so is this just a couple thing? And so I'm glad that you said no. This is a community event, and then like you said, if you're looking for someone of like minds, they're going to be there. So this is a chance. This is also a chance to, first of all, understand, like you said, what complementarity is, right? And then also, Baba, to be able to network. That's what I keep hearing, to network with people, other couples can connect with other couples, single people can meet and dialogue and see where it goes. And so, Baba, thank you so much. And this is going to be on June
3rd, Saturday, June the 3rd.
Saturday, June 3rd, and it's going to be virtual, right?
Yes, completely virtual.
Virtual. Okay. And so how do people get more information? Do they just come to your Facebook, Bob, or how do they get more information if they want to sign up?
On Facebook, and I believe I posted again today the flyer for the event, as well as the registration instructions, are posted in the same post. And that's been posted, I don't know how many times over the last few weeks. They can also go to Enia's page, or they can go to Baba and Mwalimu Baruti's page, or they can just message me, send me an email on mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com if they don't, if they don't see it there, or they don't do Facebook. But anywhere that you are connected to us, anywhere that you can connect to us, you should see the information there. And anything that's not clear, of course, send me a message, send me an email. We can go from there.
Beautiful. And Baba, people in the chat are asking what time. Brother Peace and Love asks, what time is it?
It is from, let me make sure, from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We need to make sure we're clear on that. 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, 4 to 7. So you hear that, Peace and Love, 4 to 7 p.m. I'm sorry, 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I see a Queen Mother. She said, "I hate Facebook." Yeah, we got you, Queen Mother. So we got you covered. We got you covered. Okay, we got you covered. So yeah, you can reach out via email, and then Baba. And what I'll do for you, a beautiful mother, Baba, I'll just take the flyer off of his page, and I'll just circulate it and stuff like that, so that everybody can make sure that they get it. I'll also post the information underneath the description of this video and the previous video, so that people can, people have the information. All right. So family, again, let's thumb up this video. Let's get the people in here. Let's pack this house. Let's get at least about another 50 or 60 people in the building. So if you're on Twitter, tweet the link. If you're on Facebook, post the link. Wherever you are on in this social media space, post the link. Let's get some more eyes on this video. Also, family, make sure that you take out your phone and let's cash at Baba during the presentation. Let's send him a love donation. Ya M Baruti. All right, let me put it in the chat. So while he's talking, you can all be sending out this good information. So this good old love donation. So hold on. Baruti. There we go. All right, family. So that's his Cash App. All right, the Cash App is also on the screen. Bob, I'm getting ready to share your screen. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right.
And I'll say that all the time to the students. I'll say, let's rock and roll. And some of them will give me that strange look, and I say, where do you think rock and roll came from? It didn't come from anywhere else, so we need to make sure that everybody's clear, which is part of the center discussion today. And I'm glad that you framed it the way you did, because you said being centered. You didn't just say centered. You said being centered. Like a lot of people say African or what have you, but you'll hear people like Asa Hilliard, one of our most honored ancestors, and remember Ani, Mama Murmbani, Dr. Murmbani, who will say being African. They won't just say African, they'll say being African, which speaks to a mentality where it's not just what you say, it's not just what you wear, it's how you think and how you act accordingly, because there's not supposed to be a contradiction there. So we're talking about centered or being centered. And I should have put it on this slide. I'm going to change this slide when I'm finished. It should say being centered. I'm going to change that as the solution. And I put the, because that's what we're talking about tonight. And I'm looking at centeredness, as I did when I wrote the book, as the framework out of which we should look at the world, the framework out of which we should interpret reality, how we should understand ourselves. Because when you look at the world in a particular way, when you say things in a particular way, when you think in a particular way, and we know that every sentence, every statement is political, and we know that we think in words, so we're thinking in sentences. Everything that we're thinking is political. The question, of course, is whose politics are we presenting? Whose politics are we preserving? And they should be the politics of our warrior ancestors, the politics of our ancestors. So I wanted to show first, to me, as I was putting together this PowerPoint, I wanted to get a picture of course, the center book, which is in the center here. And I want to get a picture of the classic center book, which I'll probably be running out of copies of that soon. If you order from Amazon or what have you, you'll get this center book until till the old ones run out here. But until that time, you'll be getting copies of the one like JJ has right now, which of course I like. That was the original, but I wanted to put these three together because I get a lot of questions from warriors, I'll say, who are new to the movement, new to the mentality, and they'll say, Baruti, what books would you recommend? And they usually ask about what 3 books would you recommend? And they'll usually ask about them in the order. Interestingly, I didn't do this on purpose, but if I was to recommend 3 books for warriors who want to understand what it means to be African and think and act accordingly, I would tell them these 3 books, and I would tell them these 3 in this order. I would say read Ewa first, then study Ewa first, then study centered, then study identity. That would be the order that I would suggest. That just occurred to me, so I did something right when I was putting this together. Okay, so the question is of centered or centeredness. What exactly does that mean? Why are we using the word centered? When we first moved to Atlanta a little over 20 years ago, the word conscious was being thrown around left and right. And like pretty much everything else that we have taken as our own, that we have created, that we have made to fit a revolutionary mentality, eventually, usually over a period of 5 to 10 years, it got watered down. It became pretty much meaningless as a term, just like locks. When people first started wearing locks, it was an extremely revolutionary statement. Now, when I see some brothers in locks, I'm wondering what they are. So just like conscious, in terms of it being reflective of the kind of revolutionary mindset we have, consciousness, the word consciousness, and I'll use it interchangeably when I'm writing, but people who are reading what I'm saying understand that I'm using them interchangeably. I'm not using consciousness or conscious like it's being used in the world today. I'm just using it as a synonym for centered. So, but when we came here, it meant something. It was a point of revolutionary pride, if you will. As time went on, it became very watered down. So if you walk around Atlanta, and I'm pretty sure most other places where we are, you're going to find people who have no business calling themselves conscious because of what they wear, because they read a little bit of Black literature, they read Chancellor Williams, they read a little bit of John Henry Clark. So now they're conscious, but the consciousness that I see, which is the majority here in Atlanta, does not connect the understanding of what it means to be African to their action. It's like 2 completely different things. So as we begin to see more and more of this, we want to make sure that people were clear that we weren't that kind of conscious. It has cost us, if you will, so that now this community that we're a part of, which is maybe, I guess it would be considered to be maybe 10, 15% of the quote unquote conscious community here in Atlanta, we're seen as the problem, as backward, et cetera, because we won't accept things that the quote unquote conscious community is. We're not going to walk around holding hands with Europeans. We're not going to walk around gender confused. We're not going to approve of that either. So when we're talking about centered, as we develop that, the meaning for that word, we're talking about you being centered strictly in our African tradition, strictly in who we are, especially as that relates to character, the kind of character that you have as a person, the kind of character that's exhibited by you as a person, and not for show, but in your 24/7 self. Okay. If we are centered, then we know that we are our ancestors, and we know what ancestors we are. When we're doing libation, we're not calling out the names of traitors. We know exactly who we are. We say we are our ancestors, and we're talking about we are our warrior ancestors. And just because someone is a warrior doesn't mean they're walking around toting a M16 all the time. We have warriors who walk around with candles. We have warriors who do, the kind of healing that isn't done with guns. So we say warriors, we're talking about a mentality that understands that we're at war, because war is the root word of warrior. Okay, so we know we are our ancestors and we act accordingly. And I don't think I could ever overemphasize that. But like I said, in other lectures, there's at least 1 or 2 points that folks really need to take from it. And one of the main points here is that being centered is an action. It's a behavior. It's a thought pattern. And there is not a distinction between thinking, acting, speaking. There isn't a contradiction there. Okay? And it's all grounded in who we are traditionally, going way back. Everybody else follows their traditions. We're the only people who are running from our traditions as fast and as far as we possibly can. But everybody holds on to the tradition. As I said time and time again, no powerful people has ever left their traditions. They hold on to them dearly. So we are, and I really hate to say this, but we are literally the only people on this planet who have run with all of our might at breakneck speed away from who we are as our ancestors. We're the only ones who are talking about traditions are old, archaic, outdated. You know, we don't need that. We need to move forward and get away from the past. We're the only people that are saying that. You don't hear anyone else saying that. I'm not hearing it anywhere. And of course, when we talk about our traditions, and I ask folks as they move forward in their learning, if they're not already there, you need to pick up a copy of Marimba Ani's Yurugu and study it. Read it, study it, so that you can really understand what the word asili, A-S-I-L-I, really means. It's talking about the spirit of African people that's untainted, that's uncorrupted, that was there from our beginning, that came out of our mind, our interpretation of reality, of the universe, of who we are supposed to be as a people forever, from the beginning to the end. So we know that the center of that the heart of that self-description, self-definition is Ma'at. Yeah, that's the essence. It carries all of the virtues and values that we as an African people believe in and know traditionally. And this is not to be confused with folks today who are thoroughly confused and are practicing the complete and total opposite of Ma'at and imitation of Yurugu. This is us from our beginning. It's like this what the saying in church or among Christians or what have you, that, you know, Jesus hasn't left you or God hasn't left you, left him. Ma'at didn't leave us. We left Ma'at. We stopped being Ma'at. So Ma'at has gone nowhere. Ma'at is at our center. And also, as I said here, I think it's very important that the traditions that we look at, the traditions that we're looking for, they're not subject to some newfangled interpretation. We're talking about completely uncompromised, untainted traditions. Those of our people that are of our people, not something that's a hodgepodge that was negotiated in order for us to be able to survive in this reality and it stays that way. No, we're not stopping at a certain point and then whatever before that is irrelevant, prehistory or what have you. No, this is us from our beginning. We need to go all the way back. And the last point here, of course, is that this means that we need to be African. Centered means that you are being African, not just pretending, not just superficially. You are being African. So we're talking about being centered. The first thing that we have to speak to are those things that really characterize us and you find everywhere, every African ethnic group that exists. And the discussion of whether we're ethnic groups or cultural groups, that's discussed in my book, Identity, but we're not cultural groups. That's a tactic of Europeans to create further divisions, to fragment us further. But all African ethnic groups have the circle as the center. It's the main geometric shape. And I say sphere. I'll say concentric circles when I'm talking in the book, but in the book, I also say we're talking about concentric spheres because a circle is like a flat surface, a round flat surface. But when we're talking about African people, we're including spirit, everything else in who we are. But at baseline, when we're talking, then we have to say we are people of the circle. Everywhere you find us, in the organization of our societies, the organization of our villages, in the organization of our fihankras, which are, safe areas, communities, homes, compounds, in our military movements, we are people of the circle. We absolutely are people of the circle. And from that, we have to understand how we operate as a community, since we're talking about solutions. The most important solution that we need to be concerned about now is the preservation of our families, of our communities, because those are the safe, sacred African spaces that we need to build and sustain if we want to survive. If we don't want to survive as we recreate who we are, then we can ignore that. But if we want to survive, then we need to understand this concept of circles from our traditions. And everywhere on the continent, I keep using these absolutes because these absolutes are absolute. They are true. Everywhere you find us historically, historically, everywhere you find us, you find concentric circles, which means circles within circles within circles. In our concentric circles, you had role divisions that were sex divisions because of the different responsibilities, and these different layers or these different circles, one on the outside was not more important than the one on the inside. And in fact, the part of the circle, the innermost circle, was the most important. Not the outermost. The innermost circle was the most important if we want to put some rank to it. So if you look at, you have to understand, our ancestors studied nature in order to understand how to create society, how to understand themselves, how to interpret reality, how to create reality. So just looking at how things work on this planet, animal plant life, the most important and the most delicate thing in whatever that creature is, it is what is most protected. It's put into the most protected space in that society or the ecosystem or what have you. So if we look at the human body as an example, if we look at the skeletal structure of the human body, we can immediately determine what's the most important thing to this body. What's the most valuable part of this body based upon bone structure? Our brain is the most important part. Okay, you can transplant hearts, you can do what you want, but you can't transplant brains. You can't do that. Yurugu was trying so hard, but you can't transplant brains. You can't transplant the mind. So how do we know it's the most important? Because it's completely encased in skull. It's completely encased in bone. That indicates that it needs the greatest amount of protection. Okay, next, you're going to find the heart, which is the second most important thing. And it has not only the rib cage, which of course protects other things, the lungs, which indicate there may be the third most important part, but it's got a breastplate in the front to protect it. Now, people will say, oh, well, what about, your stomach and your kidneys and all the rest of that stuff that's below your rib cage? Well, you have to have some kind of expansion in there. When I think we'd have kind of some serious problems if women got pregnant and the rib cage went all the way down to their waist. So that's naturally logical. But if you look at the human body, it's just a logical model of how nature acts, of how nature creates, of how nature ranks things in terms of their importance to the survival and in terms of their delicateness or their fragility. Then you will see that the most important things are protected the most. They're in the center of whatever it is, which of course is what causes me problems when I look at how we're putting our children out as protective shields on the exterior instead of keeping them where they need to be so they can be safe. So this image right here, to me, demonstrates that point where the peripheral is where the men were, because the men tend to be the most mobile. And one of the main reasons the men are most mobile is that women breastfeed. Men do not have the ability to do that. So the women need to be somewhere near the babies, the little ones. But the men were the ones who guarded the perimeter. And we have to understand that clearly that this was not like this, men are in charge of the outside and men control all the rest of this. More of the farmland on the continent in traditional African society was owned, if you will, we want to use the word owned, was owned by the women. It was operated by the women. The goddess of the baskets was a female, because that's where you had the seeds and that's what you harvested in. So just because the men on the perimeter doesn't make that a better space or the only dominant space for the men. But they were on the perimeter. The blacksmith wasn't in the middle of town. The blacksmith, the one who made the weapons, he was on the outskirts of town. The men were supposed to be the first ones to encounter the enemy. They were supposed to be the first ones that dealt with the enemy. They were supposed to be the first ones that saw the enemy, any threat, any problem. They were supposed to handle it first. If they happen to get past the men, then the next circle, the next inner circle, was the domain of the women. And anyone who, I don't know about today because I'm like too grown, I guess you could say, to have a mother that I'm really sitting around, or aunts that I'm really sitting around watching. But when I grew up, I didn't have an aunt that didn't have a 22 or 38 somewhere on their person in there, what they call the brassiere. She was armed. Okay, I didn't know a black woman who couldn't wield a frying pan well. And any of us who really know black women who are serious, try to snatch their child away from them and see what happens to you. So if you got past the men, and in fact, the Italians, they said that they would prefer to fight the Ethiopian men than to fight the Ethiopian women, because the women were more vicious when they fought because they were avenging their men. So this next circle is of the women. In the innermost circle, you have your wisdom and you have your future, because that's the area where you have the elders and you have the babies and the children. You have the little ones. And I would suggest the warriors to read Fukuyama's The Congo Art of Babysitting. It's a thin book which helps you to understand the level of respect that was accorded elders in the community, because they maintained their functionality. They maintained their role. They maintained their importance because of the role that they moved into as elders. So the elders were the primary teachers, and who better to teach your children about who they are, to pass on wisdom, information, knowledge, than those who know you better than anybody else. And no one knows you better than anybody else except for your elders. And you have the children there, and the older children, of course, because the elders couldn't run as fast. They couldn't move as fast. They couldn't handle little ones as well. The older children were there to help to control, if you will, the younger children, make them sit in, class, if you will, sit on that tree in that circle. So that was what the innermost circle was. So that innermost circle, which is the most valuable, was the most protected. And I'll read these real quick, which talks about what was in the outer circle, the middle circle, the inner circle, the outer circle, the arena of our men. In many ways, especially in a climate of war, men are best suited to patrol the exterior of their community. Generally, in a healthy, vibrant, secure society, the physical training they receive through their socialization into manhood, combined with greater muscle mass, best prepares them for the sometimes sacrificial role of perimeter defender, first guard, and line of interference, which to me is amazing what has happened in our community, at our HBCUs, in our schools, in our communities. Well, when I was growing up, most of the sports that brothers played, the boys played, develop their skills in terms of physical dexterity, in terms of being able to judge distance, which is very important in military operations. And on the last campus I was on, they were taking all the football fields, turning them into golf driving ranges, and they were taking basketball courts, which to us is still a contact sport, and changing them into tennis courts. And there's nothing wrong to me with any sport, but these two particular sports, basketball and football, trains you in a particular way. And that training is gone out the window. You don't see it like you saw it when I was coming up. So this is part of the process of effeminizing our males. The middle circle, the domain of our women. If enemy threats are able to slip past the men, the women await them. Some of us have forgotten the historical, power of African women and the fear they elicited in others. But our enemies have not. I talked last week about the incarceration of, 2 days ago, on the incarceration of African women and why their rate of incarceration has increased enormously relative to the African men, because Europeans know. We apparently do not. They know the power of African women, and they've been responding to that accordingly for centuries. Being our first teachers and greatest nurturers and caretakers, also made it vital to the stability and longevity of our community that our women remain close to the children and elders. And finally, men's inability to breastfeed specifically required them to not be too far away from the babies, just to specially qualify them to not be too far away. The innermost circle, the residence of our elders and children, the centers where the children are best protected. There, in that most sacred of African spaces, our wisest and most deserving, let me say that again, our wisest and most deserving elders are afforded the security and opportunity to educate children in our way without outside interruption. Okay. I don't think that our ancestors would allow old fools to teach our children. That's why I kept saying our wisest and most deserving eldership was an honor, and it wasn't given lightly, and it was given based upon evidence, which I believe we talked about that on Monday as well. Who better to teach them of their power and the responsibility of using it in service to African people than those who best know what it means to be African, which of course is a very good argument for elders picking out compliments. It's not a mandatory, it's not a requirement, but who would know who would match up better in a community that they grew up in than the elders? But of course, that's a discussion for another day. When African men and women think as warriors, i.e. have no question that we are at war, they act as warriors. Concentric circle, defense systems. They become who they imagine themselves to be through visualizing themselves as already being that, which is an important point here in terms of us affirming who we are. Probably everyone here is familiar with the concept of affirming. But everybody isn't necessarily understanding of when you have people who are motivational speakers, people who teach us how to affirm, people who use affirming a lot. They don't affirm as in where they're trying to get, like saying, I'm going to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. They say, I am a doctor. Because your brain, of course, working for you, you give it that kind of instruction, and it's going to find a way to make that happen as long as, of course, you're working at it or working toward it. It's going to find ways to assist you. It is not a matter of simply thinking, dreaming, which I have to stop at this point also, because this is something that we have to look at when we're talking about our children. I said I'm going to talk about all kinds of positive things today in the movement that we need to go. But the positive, of course, is a part of the issues. And we are not, when you spoil your child, you allow them to quit. You allow them to, you do not allow them to understand the connection, the deep connection between a dream and the work required to fulfill that dream. They just see the dream and somehow magically it's going to appear because they haven't been required to work at anything that requires an enormous amount of energy from them and beyond what they want to do. So they're connected in this dream thing, and we're seeing the result of that among the adults. It is not simply, a matter of simply thinking of what they are capable of or want to become. Instead, it is thought manifest and conscious action that places them on a direct path toward a mastery of whatever qualities there are that they wish to perfect in themselves. So in the book Centered, I talk about this concentric circle model, this concentric sphere model, because that needs to be our model in terms of our community, not just in terms of defense, which I just got finished talking about, but in terms of the center community and who gets in. And I appreciate, as strange as it may sound, I appreciate the conscious community. Because with all of the African garb and the books and the ankhs and all the rest of the stuff that goes on and walking around with the drums and being able to drum, even though, of course, the wrong people are coming to these circles, the wrong people are drumming, that sets up a shield. Because now when people look at the conscious community, they don't see the center community because we're camouflaged within the conscious community. So people don't know or can't see just how serious we are about the business of being African, because of this enormous conscious community, which has them confused into thinking that that's what we're about. So we're talking about these concentric spheres, concentric circles. We have three layers. And we see here, we're talking before, the men, the elders and the children, the women. We have the zone of modulation. So we're using this model for all kinds of analysis of African people. And we've moved from this model as a study in the defenses of the African community to a model of intellectual security, spiritual security, within these spaces in terms of we constantly have people who are waking up. Every once in a while, we have somebody who loses it, who forgets that they're African, who can't take the pressure anymore, who can't take the work anymore. And to me, they were never really centered Africans in the first place, because if you're a centered African, then you're not, you can't back out of that. You know the truth, and you actually would rather die than have to walk in the direction of being European. So we have this influx, a greater influx, if you will, of people trying to find their way to the center. Many of them stop before they get to this set of circles right here, because they see that we're not playing. They see that we're serious about this work. They see that we're serious about being elders or being warriors or being whatever it is that we are that's African in terms of being centered in the traditions of our ancestors. So we have a lot of people, and these layers protect that center. Okay, that center is what we would call the innermost sanctuary. And that middle layer is what we call the medial zone. And the outer layer is the zone of modulation. And we need to talk about, of course, why. So the zone of modulation, which is what people encounter first when they're heading toward the center. It is our first line of defense. I didn't ask it to do that. It is our first line of defense. That's where we encounter people who usually have been part of the conscious community, or have walked through the conscious community, or have met somebody in the conscious community, and they realize that this wasn't serious enough, that this wasn't heading quite to where, that this was including people who had no business there, that things were being welcomed, that the focus was there on something else, but it wasn't really on sovereignty, on the liberation, empowerment, and sovereignty of African people. And they keep walking in the direction of the center because they know they can't stop halfway to that point. But this is on a lot of modulation. Because of that, it's a main point of confrontation with people, because some people have to be stopped from coming into the center. It's very serious with us here in the center, where we've had, I'll give you an example of one young man who came and said, well, I want to work with this. I want to work with the students. I want to help with the students. When can I start? I want to volunteer. And we said, well, you can't just come into Akabin and start being in the presence of our children. There's too much insanity out there. So for us, it's going to take at least a year, sometimes 2 years of us watching you actively involved in the community for us to begin to believe that we can allow you around our children. And even then, when you come, you will be observed, and you'll be observed for quite a while. It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of knowing. We know that there are liars. We know they've been infiltrated in every movement, in every area. And we can't be stupid about stuff like this. Letting people in just to be letting people in. Letting people in, like some quote unquote grassroots organizations that will let people in just because they want numbers. Operating in the political system of the Americas, of Europe. This isn't that kind of it isn't a democracy at all, really. We're following our ancestors. They're the rulers. They've already made the decisions about what we need to be about. Our job is to make sure that we're following those instructions by working with and correcting each other. So the zone of modulation, also you find the most energetic warriors, because often they will be not the recruiters, but they're going to be the sound that those folks who want to walk toward the center hear. They're going to be the voices that they hear. They're going to be the hip hop, the rap artists that are going to be talking about what it means to be conscious and seriousness, the rebellious, the revolutionary ones, African insurrection music type people. They're going to be the ones that are welcoming them, and they're giving it to them in language that they can understand. So that's where you're going to find your most energetic warriors, in that zone of modulation, particularly toward the edges of it. The zone of modulation stands as a barrier of the 3 O's. For us, that's Euros, Negroes, Homos. They don't get in. So we've already eliminated a whole collection of individuals we have to worry about, because we know the confusion that they bring into our centers. And of course, that's one of the main issues within the conscious community relative to us, because they thoroughly embrace all 3. And we're not dealing with that. It is a rest station, really. You've been going through all this frustration, The conscious community didn't resolve that frustration for you. In fact, it might have increased it because of the things that they're accepting of and their priorities. In the conscious community, you find some of the healthiest food. You find some of the healthiest slaves in the world. You find some of the most spiritual slaves in the world, some of the most self-serving spiritualists in the world. You find in the conscious community. You don't find that in the center community. Every spiritualist I've encountered in the center community, I've run into, I've had conversations with, they understand that we're at war. And everything that they do reflects that. There was a brother who, well, he's still a part of the center community. He just doesn't live in Atlanta anymore. He was looking around. He'd been a part of us for about 5 years. And he looked around, and it was like you could see a light had gone off in his head. And he said, you know, I could be in this like a trauma unit. This is like where folks who've been shot and stabbed and cut, you know, this is where they come. And at that time in the life of Akabin, you know, we had like 18, 20 students, too many, way too many, way too many. And there was a lot of trauma that came in. And he was sitting there observing. He was one of our student teachers, if you will. And it was like on his face, this is a trauma. He used the word trauma unit to describe, and we couldn't argue with him. There's also a place for new beginnings. I'm going down this. Also a place for new beginnings for those who can see, for those who want to see, for those who want to be African so bad they don't want that insanity that Wilson described so well. They didn't want to be a part of that anymore. They wanted to come home. They wanted to be strong. They wanted to know their ancestors. They wanted to be at peace with being a warrior. So the zone of modulation tends to be a place of intense study, because when folks begin to wake up, and then my book of Sappho, I have a list of the order at which people who are becoming warriors, the stages that they go through. And one of those stages is this intense study to understand who we are. And you tend to find that intense stage in the zone of modulation. It's just like with a race, like anything else. When you start out, you have the most energy and you have the most unrestrained energy. So you're moving real fast. So these individuals, I mean, it's like they're sponges when it comes to knowledge of self. However, because it's where the conscious community meets the center community, you have treason. You have different amounts of treason. Okay? And that's where, of course, most of the treasonous ones are found out and they're removed. But they get in because, I said, agents don't have to, we have lots of agents in the conscious community. Lots of agents in the conscious community. And all agents are not paid. They're not people who are, quote unquote, blackmailed by Europeans into spying on us. Some of them voluntarily, because of the depth of their Mentacide, they come in looking to find something wrong, looking for something to destroy, looking for something to corrupt, because that's part of the European way. And especially when you understand that you get the most applause when you destroy, for Europeans, those things which are most against Europeans. That's when you get your applause. That's what we're telling our children when they left here. Some of them left here to go to HBCU. Some of them left to go to predominantly white institutions of quote unquote higher education. And we warn them, you of all people need to be extremely careful, because you will be the greatest prize for a Negro. For a Negro to turn a warrior around, there's no greater war. They could live with that, memory and metal on their chest for the rest of their lives. And Urugu would love them to no end. They'd finally get Urugu's love the way they wanted to. It's also what I call the most porous, which reflects the rest of this in the sense that you have more in and out, more people moving in and out. When you move to the medial zone, the middle one, that's the last buffer. That's the last, here we go again with this thing. That's the last line of defense, the last most serious and obvious line of defense before you get to the innermost sanctuary. Okay. It's less spiritually, mentally dense than the center. Okay, it's not as hardcore as the center is. Even though you have some people in the center who operate there, you have some people who are in that innermost sanctuary who operate on the outermost layers. Okay, but it's not concentrated like that innermost sanctuary. Okay, and I said it's less spiritually, mentally dense than the center, but it's more spiritually, mentally dense than the periphery. It's in the middle. And I like to think about it as amniotic fluid. If you talk about something that's alive, okay, with an embryo, if you will, of African people who are really African people, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. You don't find any Europeans you're not going to find any Europeans in the center, period. But you definitely aren't going to find in that innermost sanctuary. But I like to think about amniotic fluid. What does it do? It protects the baby. It cushions the baby, just like the fluid that's around your brain. It cushions. It provides a cushion. It keeps the brain from banging up against the sides of the skull. Amniotic fluid is extremely important, not just in terms of nutrients and the rest of that. It's extremely important in terms of protecting the baby. Mom might slip and fall. Mom might get knocked down. Baby needs to be protected. Mom needs to be protected too, which is something we seem to have seriously forgotten about. We look back into these traditions, we understand how Africans exhibited their value for children and why family and children were their center, where in many of the recorded studies of African people, it was the equivalent of a felony for you to scare a pregnant woman because they knew the impact of that on the baby. The idea that a woman who is pregnant drinks, because they know that you got to think, Fukuyama talked about that in, I call it a drunk baby. But Fukuyama talked about it in self-healing therapy, where you have to think about when the mother wakes up in the morning with a hangover, what does that feel like to the baby? Can you imagine a fetus with a hangover? And if you've been anywhere near alcohol seriously, and I suspect some of us have, I know I have, you know what a hangover feels like. You actually wish you were dead because the pain is that great. And really the only way to come out from under a serious hangover is to get drunk again. So I have to imagine how a fetus would feel when they wake up and they have to deal with that alcohol killing some of their brain cells. The innermost sanctuary. That's where I like to believe I am. That's where we need to go. This is what we need to build. This is what needs to be protected most. We need to look at the two outer layers as the skull. Even though part of the brain is in the skull in this model, because some of the people who are part of the innermost sanctuary, they have to do work on the periphery. They have to do work in the zone in between the periphery and the innermost sanctuary. But we understand the model, I think. Okay, this is home. We think, who is that sang the song? I have to ask Eni. The name of the song was Home. I think of her, Stephanie Mills. If you haven't heard that before, listen to it. It's a very nice song. I think about Home. And what's her name? Diane Reeves also did a beautiful song called Home, which speaks to, I mean, you sing that song, to me, you feel the innermost sanctuary. It's the most sacred area. It's the most serious area. It's the most uncompromised area in the center. For us, this house is like that. This to us is a sanctuary. Would you pollute your sanctuary? Would you dirty your sanctuary? Would you allow European in your sanctuary? That was some of the things that I love about Toni Morrison. She's not perfect. There's something I love about her. One of them, her father. And she said, she was on 60 Minutes. She said, my father didn't allow Europeans, didn't let white folks in his house. And I'm saying, yeah, that's me. Okay. But to have been brought up in that understanding, not only the power of what a man is supposed to be in our community, but the idea that you understand the nature of a threat. I don't care how quote unquote good this particular European is. You don't have time to be trying to figure that out. You're part of the enemy. You're part of that collective. You're part of that nation. It is a space that's farthest away from chaos and insanity. Because all the time that we are in the innermost sanctuary, we're working on removing insanity. Socialization process is so good, I don't know if anybody is ever able to completely remove, at least not now at this point in time, is able to completely remove Urugu's insanity, Mentacide, culture misorientation from their minds. I think I've come very far. But I understand the power of socialization and how your mind doesn't forget anything and stuff keeps popping in. I just give the example of people, I thought I was all that when it came to being African, and I found myself singing in my head Christmas songs in the department store. This is maroon level, just talking to the students the other day about what they overlook intentionally when they talk about maroon societies and quilombos. They completely and totally omit the fact, not just that these folks ran away, but they omit the fact that these folks ran away, and where they went, they escaped, and where they went, they recreated African society. They didn't just build more European society in blackface. They recreated African society. So these innermost sanctuaries are spaces where we recreate African society, not coming up with some newfangled stuff. We go back to the roots. We go back and get who we are, and we bring it into this reality and act on it to the best of our ability. This is what we call priest level. And one aspect of that priest level is what John Eric Clark said, we need to build a priesthood. So in this space right here, our children are seen as people whose talents need to be honed so that they can better serve African people. That's our priority. They get more love in the center than they could possibly get anywhere. More real love. Love is backed up by evidence that I love you. Residents, no enemy, rear children, love and trust each other. They're humble workers, and they have a victorious vision. In the center, we know our enemy. There's no discussion about that. If you're trying to get into the center and you're discussing who the enemy is, then you're not getting in, because we're clear. We're clear, very clear about who the enemy is. And we're clear that the enemy has accomplices who look like us. We know that Europeans have never been able to win any war against any people without traitors. We understand that. We know the Asians are not our friends. We're clear on what John Henry Clark said when he said we have no friends. He wasn't just talking to be talking. He wasn't trying to articulate something in an eloquent way to make it sound. No, he was serious. He understood. We rear children. We don't just raise them. We give them politics or political understanding that serves, that favors African people. So they know their responsibility to use their power in service to African people. They understand that we are bringing them up to be warriors who love their people. It's a place where we love and trust each other. What African space do we trust each other? In the center, we trust each other. If you prove that you're not trustable in the center, you're gone. I don't have time. We don't have time for games. You're gone. Because you should know better. And we don't have time to play with that when we're trying to build community. You're going to build community without trust. That's why we throw around these words that have so little meaning, because we're not talking about the fundamental pillars of it. And one of the fundamental pillars of any community, any African community, is trust. So if you're not trustable, then you don't belong in that community. You're not part of that community. Humble workers. Arrogance is a quality that is one of the worst possible ones for warriors. That's to me, it's the worst. An arrogant person, to me, is the worst. We have some people who are walking around the quote unquote African center community who we're taking as authorities who are so arrogant. I'm better than you just because I'm me. What kind of question is that? That's arrogance. I'm not to be questioned. That's arrogance. You're supposed to use the language that I do as an African because I've studied this. That's arrogance. And if I don't use your language or words that you use, then I'm inferior to you, or I'm less than you, and I can talk down to you. That's arrogance. We are humble people by design, by tradition. Arrogance is a European primary quality. It's not an African primary quality. I don't see any indicator whatsoever in any of the oracles of Ma'at that says that we need to be arrogant, or we should be arrogant, or we should appreciate arrogance, or we should honor arrogant people anywhere. And of course, we have to have a victorious vision. It can't be, I think we can win. I'd like to win. Maybe we'll win. No, we're winning. We're winning. I was corrected on that by elder one time, telling you, we're doing well. We're doing it. No. We're winning. You are doing it. You may be doing it. You can be doing it. No, you are doing it. What did Sante say? You must act as if it's impossible to fail. That's an affirmation. That's a proverb. That's a statement that requires thinking. You must act as if it's impossible to fail. What the world does that mean? It means that you believe, and you're going to die knowing that we're victorious. The only thing that we don't control is the time frame for victory. But we know that we're winning. And when they beat that knowledge out of you, then you've lost. You've been broken. They don't have to worry about you anymore, no matter how loudly you talk, no matter how revolutionary you talk, no matter how much kente cloth, mud cloth, whatever African prints you wear. They know they don't have to worry about you anymore. Because it is your affirmations, your consciousness that guides you. That's why you'll find people who are winners saying never talk bad about yourself. Because your mind takes it as an instruction. And if you don't believe that we are winning, then your mind's not going to believe that we are winning. It's not going to act accordingly. In the innermost sanctuary, reciprocity rules, like trust rules. How do you develop trust? Trust has been essentially broken from us. How do you redevelop it? By voluntarily doing things that allow trust to be built. So if it was all about money, which it's not, but if it was all about money, well, then I need to trust you with this $10 that you asked to borrow. And my trust develops because you return my $10 with maybe interest. And then we do that more and more and more and more and more, and the amounts get larger and larger and larger and larger, and we still are respecting each other. We're still being reciprocal. I say I teach your child, if you replace my roof, I'm teaching your child, you're replacing my roof. That's the development of trust. That's development of trust. Innermost sanctuaries where we have our best libraries, we have our best minds, because that's the only place that they can live. What intellectual, Jacob Carruthers said, intellectual maroons. Asa Hilliard said, intellectual maroons. All these scholars understood what that meant. It meant not that you had been kicked out of academia or kicked out of learning. It's a choice. You couldn't pay me enough to teach at well, if you pay me, I guess, a few million for a quarter's worth of work, so I could take that few million and do some work in the community, maybe I might teach for a quarter, and you didn't try to put any restrictions on what I could say to the students because you wouldn't want me to teach for a quarter to any of our students anyway. But those people who are our intellectuals, and I don't mean armchair intellectuals, that's second to arrogance to me. Those minds who understand that we're at war and they study overtime to make sure that we're clear on our direction, on our path. They can explain this. It doesn't mean they've read every book in the world. It just means they've read and interpreted whatever they read relative to our empowerment. We have our sharers there and wise keepers. I believe it's in the healers. It is in the healers where Yiqua Armor talks about sharers and keepers. You need to read 2,000 Seasons and Healers at minimum by Yiqua Armor. People who give people of their knowledge what they know that they can understand. That's one of the things, one of the qualifications of a good warrior anyway. You're well-read or well-understanding, but you can read people at least to the degree that when that person is in need of knowledge, you know exactly what book to direct them toward, exactly what warrior to direct them to, because you're able to see what they need. You're able to see what they're capable of understanding at this point in their development. For those most serious about our consciousness, raising, and protective nation-building undertaking, the answer to the question of where is the African center is here in the innermost sanctuary. In this sacred, there's a reason why that's the first adjective. In this sacred, uncompromised, fully shielded spiritual, mental, and physical space lies our true center as a living, endless, unforgetful people on this planet. Nobody else forgets. Why are we so busy about the business of forgetting? It is here where we are purest and at our best. For here reside those of us most determined to be wholly African. We are those who work, determined against all intruders and odds, to earn the highest respect and garner the most potency from the spirit of our beloved ancestors. Here, none but proven African warrior scholars are welcome. I don't know what's going on with speaking today. There are no sub-integrationists, sub-assimilationists, or sub-amalgamationists. No Negroes or lost souls, no feminists, no homosexualized beings, no Urugu here. Here, the line is clearly drawn and held against all odds to the death. Because those who are here know that being anything other than African means death, and any within who would attempt to do this are guilty of absolute treason. In reference to these innermost sanctuaries, these centers, we have to remove some things that we got from being socialized in the West. Okay. The arrogance that comes, the need to be seen, the need to have large organizations. Like he's saying, these large organizations, they get loud, they need to be seen, and the next thing you know, if they're revolutionary, they're destroyed. Name me one that hasn't been, or completely and totally compromised. So it is useless except as a mouthpiece for what, I don't know. And eventually, these circles, we have to look at it in Pan-African terms, these circles are going to find each other as they more and more develop. They're going to find each other, and that's the birth of a nation, the real birth of a nation. We have to think about the families that we build within. That's our priority. Africans are family-centered. If we're being our ancestors, then that means that we're family-centered. I guess I put transitions in here for whatever reason. That's not important. But the main reason not the only reason, but the main reason why this is a discussion in the book is because so many Africans who were in or coming toward the center at all kinds of ages were hurt because of the level of disrespect that they received from their biological families. So many, more did than didn't. But if we understand the situation that we're in, we understand that we're at war. We understand that most of us are severely menticidal. It's not moderately, but mostly severely menticidal and moving in that direction rapidly. Then we understand that we're scared of living daylight outside of our own. Negroes and lost souls don't want to be anywhere near the fallout. And subconsciously, they know that Euros will kill for nothing. And they don't want to be anywhere near you when that happens. They don't want you rubbing off on them because that may somehow accidentally turn them into you. And then they've lost all of their quote unquote security. They think that you're a fool. And those who have, I guess, the best hearts, they're going to try to work on you so they can bring you back to their level of menticide. Because they're trying to help you. I say there's no reason for conscious Africans to suffer because we have chosen to be African. We should not have to be without a close-knit collection of caring, reciprocating, sincere family simply because we chose to be African. And we should not allow ourselves to be disrespected. That's number one with me. And of course, my family knows me. You will not disrespect me because I've chosen to be African. You won't do that. Or we won't have any communications. I don't disrespect you for being a Negro or lost soul. Don't disrespect me for being an African. In this, everybody loves everybody, and I respect you whatever you want to be, and everybody should be their individual selves, live or reality. Complementarity has to be at the center of the family. Complementarity is historically our natural leadership model. And I'm sure everyone here has heard, all of our deities, all of the male deities were attached to female deities. All of them were. So if we're trying to be African, then we shouldn't have situations where he's in charge or situations where she's in charge. When we talk about community organizations, the best is when you have a husband-wife team who both are of good character, running or guiding, what have you. And if you don't have that, then still, man and a woman. And neither one of them more powerful than the other. Complementarity, theory. Complementarity, notes, practice. Another point in terms of being centered that tends to be a difficulty for warriors, which shouldn't be at all. We look around, we wake up every day and we look around and we see hell. We see us doing things that we shouldn't be doing. We see African people getting beat to death, shot to death, children getting raped. We see all of the chaos, and we see it possibly more than anybody else because our attention is on that. It stays on that. So I say we have to rethink this in terms of what is progress, because some people will say our progress is moving towards Urugu, becoming more like Urugu. But warriors have to understand that we need to measure progress based upon how far we've moved away from Urugu. That's my only indicator. Now, we also have to reconceptualize I love this. Reconceptualization is probably the most critical thing, and I don't know how to stop this from moving. When I go back in there, I'm going to take all of those transitions out, or whatever they're called. Reconceptualizations are important because how you think frames what you do. And these three quotes, I think, really make it understood. But to use somebody else's language without understanding the deep meaning of the words, you set yourself up. You set yourself up for destruction. Okay, now it's really doing this on its own, but it's no problem. I'm going to probably within the next couple of days post these two slides anyway, the reconceptualization, because we need to have a language that reflects who we are and what we want. And I tell folks, whenever reconceptualizing means that you're taking the words that already exist in this bastard language or an African language, or creating brand new words. Like Holocaust is not a word that we, is part of the dictionary, if you will. Aphorism is not a word that you're going to find in the dictionary. Universal is not a word that you're going to find in the dictionary. So we need to take these words that we have and redefine them in such a way that they fit the needs, the mental needs of our warriors, ourselves. So these are some of the examples of reconceptualizing. This is a major part of our work. And most of us do it anyway, automatically. Because whatever word we're using in terms of a definition doesn't make sense relative to where we're trying to go. Maybe I just need to do a class, whatever, on reconceptualizing terms. We don't think about the words we use a lot. We don't think about compound words, what they mean together. We don't think about sidewalk, means a walkway on the side. Underpass means a passage underneath. We don't break these words down because we assume through socialization that we really understand what they mean. We don't teach our children the prefixes and the suffixes so to understand words better, to be able to break them down better, be able to interpret European reality and language better. There's a reason why Europeans teach their children prefixes and suffixes early on. Beyond just the fact that this helps them to be able to at least guess well at words that they don't know what they mean. So, for example, here, the middle passage, that's what we say, the middle passage. But our words have to be politically full. So when they talk about getting us here, they say the middle passage, it carries no political intent, doesn't talk about who's responsible, doesn't talk about it in terms of how it fell. It's just a middle passage. The middle passage is a neutral, meaningless concept. And I used to give the example, and we have our house, you can see the front door from the back door. And there's a hallway that leads to it. And I say, that's a middle passage to our house. They don't tell you jack. So that's one of the brothers who was very knowledgeable of African language. Well, we need a term that explains this from an African center, that gives political meaning to it. He said Notorisio Tuco, which essentially means a people removed from their land forcibly through an act of war and relocated in an alien place. Now that I can understand as a warrior. That makes perfect sense as a descriptive of what happened to us. Middle passage doesn't tell anybody anything. And we're always using neutral terms because that allows Europeans to be exonerated, to be free of guilt, because nothing points at them in terms of being the source. Child stealing versus adoption. Europeans don't adopt African children, they steal them. They steal them. Adoption for me is something that's done within family, they steal our children. Universal versus universal. They'll take what they believe or say applies to everybody and make it in something universal and say it's universal, meaning it applies to everybody. It's not universal. That's them. So we don't say universal. We say universal when we're talking about something that they initiated and through socialization or whatever had everybody else participate in until they acted like it was their own or they believed it was their own. Same thing with aphorism and truism. Putting the E in before incarcerated instead of the I in, because it indicates the difference between an enslaved African and just a slave. Warrior versus soldier. Discuss that in the whole first chapter of Message to the Warriors. Sovereignty versus freedom. Sovereignty, that's a definition. I'll give it in a minute or two. But freedom doesn't mean anything. What, you get freedom to sleep with Europeans? Freedom to be everything but African? Jegna versus mentor. And the definition of Jegna is in here. Mentor in no way even comes close to possibly comparing with Jegna. Plus, mentor is a homosexual term. It describes a homosexual process in Greek mythology. Power versus influence, something that we really need to understand because we think influence is power. These are things that we can talk about. Maybe I will do that. Maybe I can beg Dr. Maat to let me come back on at some later date.
Oh, Baba, you know you don't never have to beg. You just give me the date and you're here, Baba. You just send the word.
Okay, so we can talk about this at some time in the fairly near future. Elders, this should be a hot topic, but it's a hot topic in the wrong way because so many folks, we're living in a reality where your ability to rise is based upon your ability to put down others, to destroy others. So you have a great number of people who spend an enormous amount of time trying to destroy the logic and the work for us of our elders so they can rise, so they'll be somebody. And of course, to me, the most amazing part is the huge following that they have. Because you have so many who think in that way, and they think that progress is an argument. And if I can make somebody look bad, and they can't make me look bad, then that means I won. Most elders aren't going to argue with you in the first place because they know stupidity when they see it. And they know that if, as the ancestor said, if you argue with a fool, no one can tell who the fool is. Or if you argue with a fool, the fool wins. So this shouldn't even be a point of discussion until we became Europeanized, until we lost our sense of who we are, until we forgot the very definition of wisdom in the hands of our ancestors. Where wisdom is something that accumulates over time. That's why, just in the discipline, somebody who's in one of the natural sciences, if you will, somebody who's a biologist or somebody who's in engineering or something like that, and this is not a rank ordering of any discipline whatsoever. We need all of them. But they can begin to write major discussions of whatever field or area they're in pretty much immediately after they finish graduate school or additional research. Versus a historian and our story and anthropologist, they have to do many, 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 many years of research and experience and reading before they can begin to think about writing. Because it takes a long time to accumulate wisdom versus knowledge. And because we have allowed Europeans to confuse wisdom with information with knowledge, we think that information and knowledge is wisdom. We don't understand the value of common sense anymore. So we're working around following fools because we can't think outside of that box. I'm not blaming them. In this reality, if you have become anti-Maat, if you become everything that's the opposite of who we are, following Urugu's ways, if you're following Machiavelli's The Prince versus the teachings of Ptahhotep, I understand why you're like that. I understand your mindless movement, your mindless drive to win over somebody else. And why you target our greatest speakers, because we're trying with all our heart to move as far and as fast away from being African as possible. So those people who are African become the targets. Those people who have sacrificed their lives, their very lives, their very lives for us become the targets because they're easy targets. And they don't have a voice on the internet, except here and there, like on this program. I shouldn't say program. I don't say program or show. I need to come up with another word for that because I don't like show. I don't like program because both of them, unless they're, well, we have to come up with something else.
No, I'm with you, Bob. I agree 1,000%. It sounds, you know, when you say program or show, show. When I think of show, I think of showmanship, right? And it's entertainment, right? It's all orchestrated. It's not real. It doesn't serve really a purpose. So I'm with you, Bob, on that.
Okay, so we're going to leave it up to you to come up with a better word over the next few years.
Ashe.
Okay.
So
frontline elders are supposed to be seasoned. I should have underlined that, italicized it, maybe bolded it a few times. Seasoned warriorhood models. This will be the best of us. Okay. In our tradition, of course, when you pass a certain age, the age of warriorhood, you became more of a community politician. Not like politicians in this reality, but you became somebody who pursued the interest of your people in terms of exercise of power, decision-making, et cetera, et cetera. But they were seasoned models no matter what. You were always a warrior. Once a warrior, always a warrior. And these were the models. We're talking about elders, frontline elders. I don't know any, Negroes have their elders too, but I'm talking about seasoned warrior elders. They're not olders. Olders, of course, are not politicized relative to being African, or their politics center around the way it is and safely navigating Urugu's world without completely and totally losing your dignity. We talk about elders council, which we need badly. We need elders councils badly. Of course, you need to have elders councils that people listen to and not just for show. For me, it's like for an elder, it's something that warriors select for in more than one way. They select based upon an understanding, as it did when I was teaching college. I kept hearing over and over again from good thinking faculty that the chairperson, whenever the conversation came about a chair of a department, it was always said, well, the best chairperson is the person who doesn't want to be the chair, because their concern is mostly with the interests of the students. And then, of course, I became acting chair of the sociology department, the most miserable year in my entire tenure as a college teacher. But the same thing applies with elders. Somebody's walking around talking about I'm an elder. I'm questioning the quality of their minds relative to being on the elders council. I'm really questioning that. Like when you're walking around, you're a young man and I guess you've reached that certain age, and you walking around the community, yeah, I'm a man. Everybody's kind of laughing at you because they know better. And they know that the strongest men, the best of our men, you're never going to hear them say I'm a man. They don't need to. What they do explains it all. But we need elders council, and we need elder council. We need to think about this carefully. Most of the people who came to me saying we need to develop elders council, Baba, what can we do? I mean, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. They stopped coming to me. They stopped coming to me because I put it back in, and I'm talking about young folks. They stopped coming to me because I put it back in their hands. And I'm not saying these were, they ran away from the truth and they didn't want to act. No, it's something that needs to be worked on. It needs to be well thought out. And when that needs to occur, then you put things in people's minds that make them go back and rethink so they can come up with an appropriate solution. And I would tell them, I said, yes, we need elders councils. We need local, we need municipal, we need regional, we need county, we need state, we need federal, we need international, national, internet. We need elders councils everywhere. And then, of course, you go into a little discussion about how elders are being disrespected left and right for no reason, except for somebody to rise. I said, but we have to understand, in this society, in our communities, The warriors have to decide who the elders should be. Not the elders or folks who are older who have been responsible elders, but the warriors need to decide who the elders should be, who should form the elders council. They should go to the elders. They should have agreement, and they should go to those individuals they consider to be elders and worthy of an elders council and tell them, we want you to be part of an elders council. And then from that, an elders council is created. Why? Because there needs to be accountability. There needs to be in the elders' mind an understanding, a belief that when the decision that they make, that they were called to make because it couldn't be made by others, that the decision that they were called to make is going to be followed and it's going to be enforced. And if those people who are calling them to make these decisions are part of that, which they would have to be, then they would be responsible for enforcing that because they put these people in the position to make the decision. And I came to this conclusion after an incident here in the quote-unquote conscious community here in Atlanta. And Enia and I and a few other people, and we're elders in training, but you got to, of course, pull from people who might not be elders in age because particularly African men die so young, transition so young. And we were part of a decision-making body that listened to both sides carefully, and we made a decision, and we decided on a corrective. And everybody agreed with the decision. Everybody agreed with the corrective. And the next thing we know, the next week, the person is doing exactly what we said they shouldn't be doing because it wasn't being enforced. And people were allowing them to do it and inviting them to do it. You want to break the heart of an elder? Go to them and waste their time with them making a decision based upon the issue that you brought to them and then just do the opposite of that. But if the people who the decision affects were the people who put these elders into place, then they're bound, or at least they are more bound, to follow the decision than people who were not. Oh, that's the elders council over there. I had nothing to do with that. I didn't elect them. I didn't appoint them. So their decision, so what? Who are they? Frontline elders are supposed to be relationship counselors, personal counselors, but, more than anything else, relationship counselors. But for all of these things, the relationship counseling, the elders counseling, all of those things, this is a capitalist system. Okay? You can't walk into a store and use your looks to get your goods, to make your purchases. Okay? So I can't walk into the Mercedes dealership and smile and wink and walk out with, whatever it is that I want. It has to be kind of paid for. So elders whose hands are already full, I don't know of any elder, and I know some elders whose hands are already full and who do not have retirement as a part of their vocabulary. I don't know an elder who has retirement as a part of their vocabulary. I don't know any of them whose plates are not already overflowing with responsibilities of counseling and their own grandchildren and maybe writing or going to these meetings or listening to this video or reading a book that somebody wanted them to read so they could give their opinion. I mean, it's like never ending. It's ongoing. And that is absolutely, in terms of me, that's not a complaint. I love being loved by my people, by warriors. Any of y'all does too. But you're giving them an additional duty of being on an elders council, which is taking even more time away from the little time that they have to mow their lawns, if they can mow their lawns, to maybe fix that siding on their house that's falling apart, maybe cooking the meal, maybe setting up something, maybe moving something around the house. There should be some kind of compensation. There should be reciprocity. Being on an elders council is work. It's actually work. It consumes time. So if we're asking these elders to do this work for us, then we need to find some way that it to be monetarily. Usually people who are moved into the area of being elder, they have other things that they need to have done that they, in many cases, can't do anymore because they can't lift that. Or they can't fix that because they're physically not able anymore, or it would take them 10 hours to do something that 10 years ago or 20 years ago they could do in 10, 15 minutes. So it doesn't get done. So if we're going to be asking our elders to do these things, then there should be some form of recompense. There should be some compensation. This should be reciprocal. Our elders should be, our frontline elders should be qualified as Jegna in every possible way. And there's no such thing as a perfect elder, at least not to my knowledge, even though I think Hannibal F. Reed came awfully close. But there's no such thing as a perfect elder. But there should be an aspiration. Okay? Mentoring means that you pay attention to whoever this is. It's such a small definition of what an elder or a man or a woman should be. Before we get into that definition, I just want to read this real quick. An elder is an older person in the community who has accumulated a vast working knowledge of her or his people's traditions, normalized functional beliefs and behaviors. Sad that when we think about elders being in this patriarchal society that we only think about men. The elders are our living ancestors. And in our tradition, when you reach a certain age, you move from being an elder to a living ancestor. That's how you were defined. They are a direct connection to the African spirit and way. And we distinguish between elders and those who are simply olders because Mentacide has driven some of us into a treasonous arrogance. Those who are truly elders are our seasoned visionaries. They are our proven warrior servant workers. They are those who uncompromisingly seek to do what needs to be done, and this out of a life of revolutionary sovereignty-seeking experience. They hold our vision closest to their hearts because they are us on the horizon of return. It is because of a lifetime of demonstrated commitment to righteous principles and politicized practices. The elders are sought out for the wisdom that can maintain the integrity of the family, community, and nation. Elders are beyond reproach. At least they should be. That's why they say when an elder does something wrong, they should be punished more than a young person who does the same thing because they should know better, much better. Elders are beyond reproach and held in high esteem. Among African people, being an elder is indeed an honor. Jegnas, 6 characteristics given to us. Asa Hilliard listed them. Wade Nobles listed them. Kofi Ade, Ariel Robertson listed them. They're in a number of my books. But of course, I didn't originate them. This is from the Amharic people. This is from Ethiopia, if you will. This list of what makes you qualified to be called a Jegna, that makes you qualified to be seen as the evidence of you having done these things, qualifies you to be an elder, a Jegna, is to me African to the core, because we always ask for the best. We always demand that of ourselves. A Jegna has been tested in struggle or battle. Tested. Has demonstrated extraordinary and unusual fearlessness. Not just regular fearlessness, but unusual and extraordinary in their thinking, in their speaking, in their actions, has shown determination and courage in protecting her or his people, land, and culture. Man, how far does that go beyond family, self, neighborhood, community? No, people, land, and culture, protecting all of that. Shown diligence, never stop working. Shown diligence and dedication to our people. Shown diligence and dedication to our people. Produce, and not just work, but produce an exceptionally high quality of work. Whatever they do, whatever it is that they do, an exceptionally high quality of work for our people. And 6, dedicated themselves to the protection, defense, nurturance, and development of our young by advancing our people, place, and culture. Jeez. Three concepts I want to look at because we're talking about, again, solutions. That means they need to be framed in a particular way. Nation building, re-Africanization, and sovereignty are three very important concepts in that, like Sankofa. Centeredness is nation building. For Africans, nation building is a process by which our nation is rebuilt. It's a process by which our nation is rebuilt. It's nation building. Re-Africanization. Your beautiful children. Littlest one has fists raised. Re-Africanization is the process by which African self-consciousness is deliberately restored by Africans. We return us to us. Re-Africanization. Sovereignty seeking. I have to read the next definition. Because in me, it keeps coming back to me. I wrote this. I'm very proud, if you will, of this definition because of how the mamas like it. But I said, nothing is new under the sun. I'm not saying anything that shouldn't already be understood and understood well. But everybody should have a definition of sovereignty somewhere that they read on a regular basis so they can be reminded. They can have a review of what they're supposed to be doing. This is an affirmation. Being sovereign means having absolute control over the life of the nation. Absolute control. Not a Marcus Garvey type control. Right now, as always for African people, sovereignty is measured by how intelligently, independently, and powerfully we control our resources, story, culture, time, space, and destiny. It is to have the power within the nation to control our lives and to control them in our best interest, regardless of opposition from outside. Accordingly, being sovereign has to mean that there is no one beyond us who makes any decisions about how we rule ourselves, how we live, what we believe, and how we deal with enemies, whether aliens or traitors, and how we visualize our future and communicate and express that vision. How we pass that bad boy on. Because as Wade Noble says, if you're not passing on who you are in its absolute truth to the children, then you have no character. You're not worth the dirt that you stand on. It means that we are completely and consciously self-defining, self-determining, and self-empowered. And since no nation has ever risen to power and stayed there without holding their own traditions sacred. Sovereignty necessarily means that we know, respect, protect, and extend in time through every coming generation who we are as a direct reflection of our ancestors. I think that's a pretty good concrete definition of sovereignty. We should have a vision. As warriors, we should have a vision. How are you going to have solutions without a vision? Nothing is impossible for Africans with the will to do what is necessary. And a clear understanding of what needs to be done. We only need to have a fearless, uncompromising vision of what a traditional African world would look like. Would have to be like in today's reality to give our thoughts and actions that true aim. We have to understand this reality and the one that we're trying to create out of our traditions, out of who we are. We have only to return to what already exists inside of us. It has gone nowhere. We have been, are now, and always will be African. No power on this earth can, and no benign power in the universe would ever think to change that. The vision applied. And this is a list. And I don't know if I have time. I'm hoping that I do. But if not,
Baba, you always have time on this platform, Baba. Take your time.
So this is a list. There are 3 slides with this. And to me, these are fundamental. And of course, there's no limits to a list. If we're doing the work, we set solutions, right? So these are some solutions. This is a list of solutions that we can apply. Creating strong, lasting families. We must find worthy compliments and commit ourselves to a lifetime of building on the front line with them. Commit ourselves to that. Come hell or high water. We must produce children and rear them together in a warriorhood that reflects their divine potential. Rear them together. Commit ourselves to teaching the babies, the children, the youth. It is our place to make them understand our sovereignty priority. It's our place, no one else's, because they're going to give it to them wrong. Sovereignty must be explained in such a way that it is clearly distinguishable from nebulous, seemingly synonymous concepts like freedom or liberation. Explain sovereignty to little ones. They get it. And they stick their chests out and they get busy. And clarity must be based on a serious study of the question, free or liberated to be what? Our children must be socialized to accept as their primary focus the use of their power in service to the greater African good. We must make priesthoods, as Nana Jahari Clark said, of them. We must commit ourselves to building effective, lasting, truly African-centered schools. Not, as Nana Sanyika would say, African-themed schools, but African-centered schools. These institutions of higher education, and they're institutions of higher education from pre-K up. These institutions of higher education must be solid, independently funded institutions which uncompromisingly pass on our timeless truths and sovereign vision to the watoto as well as the adults. And we've got to stop calling them alternative schools, because they're not alternative. The public school system is the alternative. These are the private schools that are alternatives. Independent African-centered schools are the center. They are the one. Everything else is an imitation. And bad ones at that. Exclusively buying black, politically buying black, which means that you want to know what the seller's politics are. I don't want to give my money to some Negro who's going to immediately rush to Europeans and give it to them. who's trying to take my money from me to give it to Europeans. We must fiscally discipline ourselves and dedicate our minds to using 100% of our $1 trillion plus in spending power on ourselves rather than a mere 4% that we currently do. Imagine that. Only 4% of our discretionary income, only 4% of it is spent on Black businesses, whether they're politically Black or not. The skills and know-how to build and repair whatever structures, homes, gardens, stores, etc., katha wakatha, are needed to supply for all of our needs must be acquired and passed on so that as our youth come of age, they will see no need to leave our community and give themselves to Yurugu. We must create secret societies. We must create secret societies. We must create secret societies. Any people with power has secret societies. Every people with power have secret societies. Take our teens and have them read Schuyler's Black Empire or N. Xavier Arnold's The Genocide Files. Give them something to think about. We should be financially supporting those organizations which actively pursue our interests by committing ourselves to selflessly dedicating a portion of our income to them. Everybody does that. Even Negroes do that to a degree, but of course, most of their money is going to supporting those white institutions, which of course are pursuing their interests in their mind. Because they know that if you don't financially support those institutions that pursue our interests, then our interests are going to be lost when they die. European Jews, and I hate to use any European as an example, but they're like the perfect example of an ethnicity within a nation that financially supports its own. Call it revolutionary ties. Sister in, where is she? Virginia, Richmond, Virginia now. She came up with that concept. We've been using it ever since. Tithes is not a religious term. The church doesn't own it. Tithes has a generic meaning. It just means that committing part of your income to an institution, organization, group, whatever, on an annual basis. You just, no matter what, that goes to that organization. $1, $2, $1,000, $10,000, whatever. Every month, that goes to the organization because it's pursuing our interests. We're pursuing the interests of our people, and those are the kind of interests for our people that you're interested in. Everybody does this with us, and then we cry when our organizations die, especially the most revolutionary ones. Form study action groups. No more study groups. No more reading clubs. If we're African, then we do not separate action from our thought. I said, wisdom was defined in Africa by you applying it in service to African people, benefiting your community. If you weren't applying what you knew, then you weren't wise, you were stupid. So if we're studying Wilson, we're studying Clark, we're studying Arnie, we're studying Carruthers, then the agenda, or part of the agenda, should be to apply that as a group within the community, or even maybe a group among ourselves, but to apply it. We have a rites of passage program. Part of that rights program, in terms of being servants of the people, should be that somebody or some collection of people in the community who need assistance should be part of the members of the rights programs weekend work. So they can connect, not just by word of mouth, but by actually seeing the benefit of it by doing it. Promoting entrepreneurialism among all of our warriors. Everybody has talents. Everybody. A lot of us don't recognize what they are, but everybody has talents. And when you start doing something for profit or bartering, then you might see the quality of your talents and it becomes something big that can help the community even more. Providing apprenticeships for our warriors in training and adults in need of skills. We need that so badly. We have so many people have so many skills, and they're not passing them on. I don't even know. I'm sure somebody does, but people who can in the community, can food in the community. It's become a lost art in our community, and Europeans are bringing it back in theirs. They brought it back in theirs. These children need to know these skills. Any skill that has to do with a house, carpentry, bricklaying, landscaping, plumbing, electrical work, anything, they need to be there. They need to be there. Painting, they need to be there. And I guess there are some, but I have yet to see any child who wasn't appreciative of acquiring the skill, even if it was hard work and even if it wasn't immediate. Teach our children to volunteer when they see an African man or African woman at work doing something that they don't know about. Teach them to go and try to find a way for that person to teach them. It was so sad to me. We have a cobbler here in Atlanta. I don't know if he's still alive or not. We have a cobbler. That's a shoemaker, a black shoemaker, black cobbler here in Atlanta. And he offered a summer session to teach black children, African children. He specified, maybe that was the problem. He specified African children. He was willing to teach them how to make shoes. I'm not talking about, just taking a piece of a tire and putting a string to one side. So he made shoes. He made boots. And he offered this free session. Nobody came. I was sad. That was so sad to me. We need to barter those skills that we have. Getting what we need and giving what others need. Develops trust. Develops trust. Just like farming together, doing raised beds together. I think that's probably one of the most easiest, or not the most easiest. That's not grammatically correct. One of the easiest and trust building practices that we can do. Working in the garden together. Connecting with Africans globally in the context of every institution we're building. So what, you don't live on the continent, that doesn't mean you can't connect with anybody on the continent. Either by somebody who's traveling back and forth or that thing called social media. Convening conferences. This is a big one here. And it came out of me realizing way back before I was conscious that our children see us as contradictions because we complain about giving Europeans all of our money, but we have conferences that we brag about where everything is held in their space, spending money on them for the entire conference, getting here, using their means of conveyance, paying them from the point of departure to the point of returning home, paying them for everything, and our children see it. So when now they see us talking about, we're always giving everything to the white man, but we're giving everything to the white man. I see that in conscious community all the time, bragging about where this event is held and it's not our space. That's why I was so proud of this year's Abakisim Sunsun, because it was done on a Black person's land. Everything that was done, that was involved in it, from the first thought to the closing libation, was us. Everything. So I said it'd be wonderful if we had like a men's conference or a women's conference or a warriors conference or family conference or conference on some other topic where we showed the children, we showed those children. They think that we don't know what we're doing. They think that we're not in charge. Where we ran, put together, programmed, set up, paid for to each other, everything from the beginning to the end, transportation, food, place of the event, everything. We might get into the habit of doing that. What did they say? $1 travels around the Asian community 7 times before it leaves. White community 5 times. For us, less than 1 time. We need to establish security boundaries for our homes and other sacred spaces and enforce it in every way possible. I don't understand African-centered institutions, particularly schools that don't have security drills. We got drills for everything but security. But we're supposed to be at war. And we don't have security drills. And these are our children. You have security everywhere, whether seen or understood. There needs to be security everywhere. There is a center where we're doing anything. And I say, if sisters want to have their needlework class, whatever, in a home, and they don't want any brothers around because they want to talk what they want to talk about, then some security should be around that house without having to go in. There should be no situation where African-centered people exist where there isn't security. And of course, I would argue in moving in that direction, everybody needs to be present for my Common Sense Security lecture, which I'm very pleased that more and more people are attending because they, through word of mouth, understand the value of it. I think it's very valuable. This, in many cases, old wisdom. Need to spend more time working together, something we've already talked about. Helping each other to develop our character so that it's worthy of us. We already talked about organizing and establishing elders council. And the last one is actively engaging in spiritual warfare. How do you do that? You connect. If you're a vessel and spirit is most of you, then you're already connected to spirit. You just have to have some conversations with inside so it can pull more of what you need from maybe outside and get to work. We're doing our annual complementarity conference, which is solution-based, on June the 3rd from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Doesn't make a difference if you're single, married, co-parenting, girlfriend, boyfriend, engaged. You need to be there. Teenager. And there are some people who are younger than that. We talk about relationships down to folks who are in the 4th grade. It's online. And y'all just reminded me, it's online. It's a virtual conference. And we're discovering that's more within reason because we're able to reach, more people.
I agree, Baba. I agree.
And the last slide on here is what I just talked about. This is going to be in July the 8th, from 12 noon to 4. I have a book called Common Sense Security, where I talk about a number of different things that we need to think about in terms of security ourselves, our homes, our neighborhoods, our events, our activities. And a lot of it, things that I saw and learned about when I was young, which isn't getting passed on. I strongly suggest sisters be present for this. But of course, it's for brothers too. We need reviews. I need a review. So it's not like I'm not protecting my home or whatever, but there are things that I'll forget about from time to time. Okay. So I'm completed, I'll say a BB for Hodier, and I will try to come back into where I'm supposed to in show. Okay. And stop sharing.
You did it, Baba. Did you do it? You see me?
I can't see you.
Look, I see.
Okay.
I'm
so
like, you did it.
I'm getting better. So I'm going to come out of PowerPoint. I got it. I know what to do now.
All right, okay. Look.
Here.
Let me drop a bomb.
Fire!
Baba Adupe, Dua, Madasi, Asante Sana for such a powerful presentation. And now I can show you all of the stuff that people are saying. So family, let's show Baba some love. Let's drop some fire symbols in the chat. Let's drop some fire symbols in the chat right now. And I'm going to put it on the screen so Baba can see all of your love. We wanted to shower you with thanks, Baba. And I'm going to show you everyone's comment on the screen, family. So someone said, wow, this is powerful. Peace and love. He said, thank you, Baba Baruti. Oh, goodness, there's a lot of them, Baba. Brother Vincent said, wonderful. Peace and love said, bomb. The Queen Mother, beautiful mind. She said, thank you so much. Omega Sunlight. He said, fire. KC said, fire. Peace said, fire. Peace and love said, fire. TY313 said, fire. The E5 twins, they said, fire, fire. All right. We got Sister BJ Riggs in the building. She said, fire. I'm just showing you, Baba, all of these symbols. I'm just, look at this. Sister Kenya's in the building. I see Brother Mike Guess is in the building. Peace and love said, I love you, Baba. And then you have Brother saying Kofa. He says, you know, the red, black, and green. You got my personal account. Brother Jay Way. You have I'm a little different TV in the building. You got somebody. Look at this. Look, someone said the non-swirl zone.
There we go.
Look at that. Look at that brown girl from Boston. She's sending you the fire symbols, Baba. And then you have Brother Vincent, the fire symbols. All right. And then we have my E5 twins. They said, Oku Shay, Ray, Baba. I salute your honest work. He, she, Murph. It says, give thanks, Baba Baruti. You got Sister Tiffany in the building. She said, excellent presentation. So, Baba, they're giving you all your flowers in the chat. Family, also right now, family, let's show some reciprocity. We talked about this on Wednesday, right? The concept of reciprocity, right? And that's one of the 7 cardinals of Ma'at, one of the principles of Ma'at, reciprocity. So Baba just spent his time, energy, and wisdom, a lot of it, okay? He gave a lot of it to us tonight. And I know that we can't repay him. We can never repay him for all that he's given, but we can try, right? We can send him something. So let's practice reciprocity tonight, family. You can Cash App him right now. $ Ya M Baruti. So that is YAAM Baruti. Also, family, grab his books. Okay. So on Wednesday, he gave us a dynamite presentation on Mentacide, and we need to grab it and we need to study it. Ashe. Also tonight, family, he talked about centered. Get his book on centered. So I know a lot of people, sometimes you all reach out to me, Dr. Maat, where can I get more information? Buy the books. The books are right here. This is how you can get the information. Because of course he can't give you everything, you know, in 2 hours, right? He gave you what he could give you, but now you got to do your due diligence, right? And go purchase the books and do the studying. All right, family. So you can get his books. The website is down right now, but it'll be back up and running. akabenhouse.com. I'll put that in the description. But for now, you can reach out to Baba directly. Baba, what is your email address, Baba?
mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com. So first and last name. mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com. And of course, you know, there's Facebook page. There's Baba and Mwalimu Baruti on Facebook, which you can always access. And you can, of course, also reach out to Yah Baruti on Facebook as well.
So you heard him, family. I have his email address on the screen, mwalimubaruti@yahoo.com. Just hit him up. Say, Baba, saw your presentation. Want to grab X amount of copies of your books, and Baba will ship them right out to you, okay? So just make sure that you contact him. Get his books, family. Also, before you go, let's take out our cell phones. I'm taking out mine, and Baba, no, I'll take mine out in a heartbeat, okay? Yes. And I will send a Cash App. I'll send a love donation, family. So make sure right now that you send a love donation. $ Ya, YAAM Baruti. Baba, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
No, I'm looking forward to everybody for everybody to come to the Complementarity Conference. We're really looking. We're gearing up for that. And I am especially my 2 favorite lectures of the year are Kebuka and Common Sense Security.
Bobby, you know we bring you to Baltimore for that.
Yes.
We bring you. Whoa! I can't wait. It's going to be phenomenal. So I'll talk to you about that, you know, another day. But bringing you said, so those are your 2 favorite lectures: Complementarity and Kebuka.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm looking forward to everybody being there. And I want to close the same thing as I said before, even though the emphasis should be greater. Every time it's said, it should be greater. People should appreciate you for what you're doing for us. And again, this is not easy work. It's not just you appear online and everything is good. There's stuff that goes along with that is difficult.
Absolutely, Bob.
You have plates that are full, and this is something that you're doing. What they say, when you get finished with your daytime work, then you start really doing your real work.
Come on, Baba. Come on.
This is real work. This is a real conversation with people. And I'm glad to be a part of this conversation, but people should be giving you your flowers as well. They need to show you your appreciation for what you're doing for us, giving us the space. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hearing me here. So I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate the comments. It's truly, what was that to understand? It's the honor that comes with being honored by your own. The honor that comes from being honored by warriors. And I appreciate that. So I'll say BB Fahodier. And in terms of Vincent Valentine, we also have PayPal, which is Baruti at yahoo.com.
Baruti
at yahoo.com.
Yahoo.com.
You see, everything's in her name. She doesn't trust me with the money. And I don't trust me with the money either. I said one of the days we have to sit down, we're talking about complementarity, talk about domains and the importance of domains and people operating within complementary relationships based upon what they're good at.
Come on, Baba. And that's what Ifa Abadoume said in her book. She was saying that whole this role, the man is supposed to do this and that. She said, no, she said, in traditional African cultures, as she was speaking about Igbo, she said, sometimes the men were very domestic and the women went out to the market and they went and sold things. And so it wasn't about, oh, you're the man, you suppose, and I understand that there's some things, Baba, but it seems like in this society, if a man stays home or if a woman handles the finances, she's looked at as more masculine. He's looked at more. And like you said, it's about who does what and who's good at what. And that's what it's about, Baba.
Should be that clear cut.
That's what it's about, Baba. So family, you heard them. You can also PayPal Baba. Okay. Where did I do? I know I dropped it in the chat somewhere. Where did I do? Okay, here it is. You can PayPal Baba at Baruti at yahoo.com. So you can send a love donation there as well. Cause I know some people don't have Cash App. Some people have PayPal and some people have Zelle. I'm getting ready to get a Zelle account myself. Okay. Some people have Zelle. And so family, you can PayPal him there. All right, Bob.
No, just call him away.
Okay. No, it's fine, Baba.
No, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. She coming. I want to make sure that the PayPal is
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm with you.
Yeah. I know me. PayPal, Baruti at yahoo.com. PayPal, Baruti at yahoo.com. All right, she says I'm correct.
Okay, that's cool. Look, I was hoping, Bob, it wasn't the M. I was hoping that we didn't miss the M. So you were good to go.
So we're good.
All right.
We're good.
And Bob, look who's coming on. Look who's coming on next week. I just want to show you really quickly, Bob, and I'm gonna let you go. Look who's coming on next week, Bob.
One of my favorite people on the planet.
Come on, Bob.
Serious warrior. Serious warrior. I'm serious. He is a serious warrior, and folks seriously need to listen to him. They need to listen to his wife as well. They need to listen to him. He is completely and totally dedicated to the sovereignty of African people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, family. So you heard Baba Baruti. Make sure you're back in the building next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear from Baba Imhotep Fadiu on African manhood in the 21st century. Come on, family. Make sure that you're in the building. And look, I always tell the sisters, Baba, because people say, oh, well, his book, is it just for men? I tell the sisters, get the book. So you have something to measure. You meet a man and you say, okay, I can use this as a tool to gauge or to measure this man that I'm courting, right? And so I tell sisters, get that. Then I tell sisters, buy for the men in your family, buy for your sons, buy it. And then so family, make sure you're all in the building, okay? He's going to be discussing African manhood in the 21st century on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then he's going to return on Friday to give us a historical breakdown of race first and its meaning. So he's going to trace it all the way back to the 1800s before Garvey, family, before Garvey. Okay, he's going to trace it all the way back to the 1800s and bring it all the way up until now, family. So make sure that you're in the building for this powerful, powerful lecture series next week. All right, Baba, we can get out of here, Baba. You go ahead and enjoy the rest of your night. Again, Baba, thank you so much. And I want you to thank Mama for us. Okay. Because she, this is her time.
Yes.
This is cutting it to time. So please send our love and our thanks to Mama Baruti as well. Mama Ya.
Will do.
All right.
A BB for Hodie.
A BB for Hodie, Baba. All right, family. Peace and black power to you. A BB for Hodie. A Huru Sasa. Hold on. Matter of fact, let me play our great Geronimo Pratt's voice. A Huru Sasa.
Uhuru Sasa. Uhuru Sasa. Uhuru Sasa. Uhuru Sasa.
A Huru freedom Sasa. Now a BB Fahodie, African liberation. Peace